Okay, we are live. Our webinar is going to start in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to let people jump on. I think everybody knows that it's going to start at 12. So we've got a couple of minutes. I thought I would jump on early just in case any of you were having some difficulty getting in. You would actually see a friendly face. So go ahead. If you are coming in live, then please let me know where you're coming in from. And if you are catching this on the replay, then please let me know that you're here on the replay. Today, we're going to be talking about independent contractors. So if you are an independent contractor, fantastic. Then just take some notes as to what small business owners are going to be looking for. And if you're a solopreneur or a small business owners, then please take notes so that you make sure that you hire your contractors appropriately. And you can make comments as we're going along in this webinar. I should be able to see them. I'm coming into you from StreamYard, so we should be able to see the comments come up on the screen as you put them in. So if you have a comment or a question, then feel free to type it in and I will answer those as we go along. Now, it's coming up on noon, and welcome everybody. I want to make sure that we are respectful of everybody's time. So I want to start on time. If you missed the beginning of this, then no problem. You can always catch it on the replay. So hello, everybody. My name is Wendy Byford. Welcome to this webinar. We're going to be talking about independent contractors versus employees. Is it really worth the risk to hire independent contractors? Well, if you're a solopreneur or a small business owner, then it is very tempting to hire independent contractors for a variety of reasons we're going to be talking about. However, there are significant risks if you don't do it the right way. So stick with me for the next 30 minutes, and we're going to talk about how you can hire your independent contractors without risk. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so independent contractors. There are some significant risks involved, but if you do the things that we're going to be talking about, then you should be able to have independent contractors or independent contractors and employees as workers in your business without any risk involved. So, first of all, why would you listen to me? Well, as I said, my name is Wendy Byford. I'm a corporate America escapee. I spent 30 years in corporate America, traveling around the world, doing all kinds of things as a global business development manager for computers for a Fortune 100 company. And after I left corporate America, I built my own business to 7 figures, and we had employees and contractors. We had both. And this is where I learned how to do things appropriately to make sure that the employees were really classified as employees, that the contractors really were contractors. We had a business setting up LLCs and corporations. We still do. It's 20 years old. We've done 30,000 filings for about 20,000 clients. And we also teach solopreneurs and small business owners how to maintain their LLCs so that they do things the right way. And teaching all of you solopreneurs and small business owners, this webinar is part of that training. Now, we also offer legal services for solopreneurs, small business owners, their families, and employees. And I'm going to be talking about that at the end because there is a place where you do need to speak to attorneys, and we want to make sure that you can get the legal services that you need for a price that fits your budget. So we're going to talk about that at the end. Okay, what happens if you misclassify a worker? In other words, why should you even be listening to this, right? Well, there are lots of issues that can come up if you misclassify a worker, and I'll explain to you how that can actually happen. Possible results include you can get your entire business audited. if the IRS believes that you've misclassified workers, they're going to send a team of people in and they're going to tear your business apart. So you want to make sure that that isn't the case. There can be lawsuits launched against the company and its managers. Years ago, when misclassification wasn't really a big issue, way back, there was a company that had both employees and what they called contractors. The contractors got pretty tired of sitting side by side with the employees because they did the same jobs and they worked the same hours, but the independent contractors didn't get any benefits. And it became a really sore point with the contractors. And there were a significant number of contractors in this company. So they took the company to court and the company lost, which meant that they had to pay back pay, payroll taxes, penalties, interest. They had to give retroactive entitlement to benefits to the contractors that had not received them all the years they'd been working for that company. Now, the other thing that may happen is if you misclassify a worker, is that the managers and the owners of the company, that's you and anybody else who owns your company, may be personally liable for unpaid wages. So there's a significant downside to misclassifying a worker. It's not a problem to hire an independent contractor if you do it the right way. But if you hire what would be an employee and classify them as an independent contractor, and the IRS or the Department of Labor comes in and does an audit, then all of these things that you see on the screen may be things that you have to deal with. And it's not fun having to explain what happened and figuring out the thousands of dollars that you now owe. So firstly, what is an independent contractor? Well, an independent contractor is a self-employed person who's contracted formally or informally, hopefully with a contract, to provide services to perform work for another entity, that's your business, as an independent worker, i.e. a non-employee. That independent contractor is then responsible for paying their own taxes, including self-employment taxes, and depending upon how they're set up, they may receive a 1099 miscellaneous from you, not a W-2. So that's an independent contractor. So why is hiring an independent contractor so attractive? Well, the first thing that most of us think about is money, right? The total cost is lower. There's no payroll taxes, no benefits, no paid leave, payroll withholding, overtime. None of that applies to an independent contractor. So a lot of times it's easier on a small business budget to hire an independent contractor than it is to make that commitment to an employee. Because with an employee, you have an ongoing cost. And there's lots of other things in there like benefits and things that raise that cost significantly. And then basically you are responsible for that person's livelihood. So sometimes as a small business owner, that can be really scary. And it's much easier to think, well, I'll just hire an independent contractors. So if things are a little tight, then I can let the contractor go and it's not such a big deal. There's no employee oversight. So you don't have to hire managers to look after the independent contractors. There's no evaluations to do. There's no legal protections for these independent contractors the way there are for employees. You don't have to worry about their training when they come in. They're supposed to already be trained in the area that you need them. There's no posters that you have to put on the wall. There's no handbook requirements for them. There's no minimum wage laws, exempt versus non-exempt classifications. None of that applies to an independent contractor. So it makes it a lot cleaner and easier for you to hire them. And there's no requirement to keep the contractor after the project is finished. You're not responsible for their livelihood. And that's a big deal for many people who've never hired anybody before. This can be absolutely incredibly nerve-wracking to think that, if I hire an employee, I'm responsible for their family. So hiring an independent contractor is often much more tempting. So why is hiring an independent contractor so attractive? Well, the result, in 2021, as an example, a construction worker package for an employee was $52,398, whereas for a contractor, it was simply $35,670. The difference is huge for a small business. And so it became really important for many small business owners looking at their budget to say, oh, I'm going to take the less expensive route. I'm going to hire an independent contractor rather than an employee. There's nothing wrong with hiring an independent contractor as long as you do it the right way. So what's the downside to hiring the contractor? Well, as we said, there can be a ton of problems. But in addition to the money aspect of it, or the aspect of being audited, the contractor is not part of your permanent team. And so that can cause problems if the insertion into a team isn't handled with care. Now, I said that I worked for a Fortune 100 company many years ago. And the biggest problem that we had with contractors is that the people on the team never listened to them, would not take their advice, tried to make them look bad because they didn't want themselves to look like they didn't know everything. They wanted the company to value them more than the contractor. And so they did whatever they could to make the contractor look like they didn't know what they were talking about, or the contractor was just saying things that they had already told the manager, years before. And it became a huge problem. It was such a waste of time and money to bring in contractors to a team like that. It was just counterproductive. Now, your contractor can come in and not fit with the existing culture that you're building. And that's a huge consideration, because if you're building a culture that's open, where people aren't afraid to make mistakes, they just have to figure out how to repair it and change the process so it doesn't happen again. And you have a contractor that comes in and really never wants to admit they've made a mistake, then that's kind of counter to the culture that you're building and can be really detrimental to having them on the team. They have no loyalty to the company. And so you may look at the work that they're doing and think, this is really great. Maybe we want to extend the contract a few months, but they're already off and working on the next contract. They have no loyalty to the company, and they necessarily shouldn't have loyalty to the company, because their business is contract to contract. And so they can't depend on the fact that you may want to extend their contract, right? They have to go off and do other work. And so, by definition, they don't have loyalty to your company. And they may trade off hours working on your project with a higher paying project that they have. So they may be working on your project during the hours of the day when maybe they're not at their best, because they've got somebody paying more money for a project, and that's where they're going to put their best effort. You just don't know how it's going to work out. And sometimes it's easy to just misclassify a contractor, because they say that they're an independent contractor, but maybe they really aren't, and that can cause problems down the road. And we're going to address that as we go forward. So is it worth the risk? Well, with good staffing practices, both employees and talented independent contractors can be a real bonus for your business. The employees handle the day-to-day operations, where consistency and loyalty and understanding the company and understanding the client, that knowledge is really important. And they can only build up that knowledge if they're there every day and they work with the company and they work with the clients every day. So employees are really great for that. Contractors can come in on projects where specific special knowledge is required. Perhaps you need to upgrade software or hardware. You need to install a cybersecurity system, or perhaps you need AI built into a project and you need a real specialist for that. That's absolutely fantastic. And if you can find the contractors to do that, then that's really great. They do the project, they deliver it absolutely outstanding value to you, and then they're gone. They're off with their other project, and the employees who are handling your business day to day get the benefit of that expertise, and it makes their job perhaps a little bit easier. So, how do we know that a worker is truly independent? That's the big deal, because you can make mistakes. And believe it or not, the IRS and the Department of Labor don't care that it's a mistake, right? If you misclassify a worker, then all those other things that we talked about can apply, because they don't think that ignorance of hiring the worker as an independent really counts. It's only the facts. So the IRS looks at three categories to consider when classifying someone. They look at behavioral control, they look at financial control, and they look at the relationship of the parties. So if we look at behavioral control, the first thing they want to know is, does the company have the right to direct and control the work? Now, this is a big deal, because an independent contractor is supposed to be independent. They are supposed to be able to say how the work gets done, right? Once you and an independent contractor get together and you create the statement of work, which says what the work is supposed to look like when it's finished, what is it that they're delivering to you, right? Then how it gets done is not your concern. You don't have a say in that. If you can say how the work gets done, then you don't have an independent contractor, you have an employee. Also, when the work is done, it's up to the independent contractor to decide on the hours that they work and the days that they work, right? You're going to have a deadline that's in the contract, and that's perfectly fine. But if you dictate that the work has to be done during certain hours, then that looks more like an employee. Now, if you're hiring somebody through an employment service, for example, to answer the phone and your business hours are 8 to 5, that's fine. That person has to be available 8 to 5 to answer the phone. But if you're having a software installed, for example, and that person wants to install the software in the evening as opposed to during working hours, you don't get a say on that. As long as in the statement of work it says that you don't disrupt the working hours of the employees, as an example, or you give so many hours notice before you shut down the computers to do the update, as an example, then you don't get to say exactly what the hours are that they have to work in. Where the work is done, unless there are security issues or trade secret issues, you don't get to say where the work is done, whether the person is working from their home or from an office or anywhere else. That's where they do their work. They don't have to come in and sit at a desk that you provide so that you can oversee them. If that happens, then you've got an employee. You don't have an independent contractor. You don't get to say what tools, equipment, or resources are used. As an example, that's up to the independent contractor. You don't say what training must be taken. You're hiring them for their expertise. They have to have that training already. If you provide the training to upgrade their skills, then that's a tick mark for the IRS to say you don't have an independent contractor, you've got an employee. And of course, you can't say where supplies are to be purchased. If you've got a really great deal with some company to provide supplies, you can't say to the independent contractor, you have to buy from them so that your costs are lower and you don't charge me as much. It's not your decision where they buy supplies. That's up to them. Financial control really comes down to are they really dependent on you? So, does the contractor have a significant investment in their business? This is really important. Did they invest in equipment? So, if they're using computers, did they buy their own computer, or are they using yours? If they need a printer, are they using your printer, or did they buy one? Did they invest in training? Did they invest in office space, even if it's a home office, right? Did they invest in software? Do they have employees if they need them? Right? Did they make an investment in their business? Or are they just showing up and expecting you to provide everything? If they don't have an investment in their business, then they're probably an employee. They don't have a business at all. Are they reimbursed for business expenses? Now, everybody's seen the television programs where the PI says, okay, my expenses are $500 a day plus expenses, right? That's fine. If in the statement of work, there are going to be expenses that are not built in and you're charging them on a daily basis, that's fine. But you're going to invoice those daily expenses. You're not going to present, a chit to the finance department to say to pay for, the following things. You're basically going to have that on an invoice. Right? But more significantly, daily expenses are usually part of the total price that an independent contractor is charging you. They pretty much know what their expenses are going to be. They know what their uplift is going to be for their profit. And so they figure out a price with you for the project that you're doing. And then they're going to invoice on the basis of that agreement, right? It's not normal for people to be charging daily expenses unless it's a specific type of business where the daily expenses perhaps can fluctuate vastly. There's no way to tell, and so they're going to be invoiced separately. Do they risk loss of profit as well? The best way to tell if somebody has a business versus being an employee is, do they bear the risk if they didn't price appropriately? Are they bearing the risk of loss? right? If you've got your own business, then you make the profit and you risk the loss as well. If you're not bearing that risk, then you're not really in business, you're an employee. And what's the relationship with the parties? Okay. Is there a written contract with, terms and conditions, and is there a statement of work? If it's an independent contractor, there should be a contract. Does the contractor invoice according to the terms and submit expenses, or if they have to, for daily expenses, or are they just submitting expenses? If they're just submitting expenses, they're not an independent contractor. Does the contractor get benefits, insurance, and paid leave? Well, that's a no-no. If they're getting all that, they're not a contractor. Is the contractor significantly dependent on the company for his or her livelihood? This is a huge one for the IRS. If they look at that person and say, if your contract is terminated, you no longer are able to pay your bills, then that person is an employee. They're not a contractor. They are totally dependent on you for their livelihood, and that makes them an employee. Is the work integral to the business? Now, this is also a big one for you. If the contractor leaves and it creates a huge problem for the running of the business, then they're probably an employee. That's different from the fact that they're delivering something that will enhance the business, for example. So let's say that you've got an independent contractor who is doing a project with AI, which will make it easier for you to do marketing. Brilliant. But if they, for example, get sick and that project is delayed, you can continue to run your business the way you always have. It's just that those enhancements are going to be a little late. And so you have to wait. And yes, it's annoying, or maybe you even have to let that person go and hire a new independent contractor to complete the project. But it doesn't stop you from doing your business. So is the work integral to the business? If it is, you probably have an employee. Okay. Misconceptions. Well, having a contract proves that the worker's an independent contractor. That's a misconception. It's a good thing to have. If you have an independent contractor, you should have a contract, right? But on its own, it doesn't mean that that worker is an independent contractor. It's just one of the little boxes that gets ticked to say, yeah, okay, so we've got a contract. We have to classify the worker the way they want to be classified. Just because somebody says they're an independent contractor does not make them an independent contractor, right? You have to go through all the other things that we talked about to see whether or not they truly are an independent contractor. And sometimes it may be really tempting to say, well, we're a small business. The government's never going to know how the worker's classified. So we're going to just say that they're an independent contractor. And let me tell you, that is the biggest fallacy, that the government will never know. There are lots of ways that the government will find out. And when they do, all of those things that I said at the beginning were a problem when you misclassify are going to come down on your head. So, good practices. Create a contract with a statement of work that both parties agree to and sign. And sign the contract with the independent contractor's company, not the individual. That makes it more like you're signing with a business. Now, sometimes we have old school people that we really like. If you are in construction, for example, you may have a subcontractor who's never set up an LLC. Like, he's worked for 30 years in construction. He's never had a problem. He's got good insurance. He's just not going to go to the trouble of having an LLC. And that's fine. You're going to contract with the individual. But generally speaking, if the person has an LLC or a corporation, it makes it better for you, because you're contracting with the LLC or the corporation, not with the individual, which by definition says if the individual isn't capable of delivering the work, that they can hire somebody else to do the work, because you're contracting with the company, not with the actual person. And of course, as an independent contractor, you don't get to say, I'm contracting with that person. That's the only person who can deliver, because that defeats the whole purpose of having independent contractors. Pay the independent contractor by invoice, no timesheets. A timesheet makes them look like an employee. And don't pay the invoice on the same day as you do payroll, because that makes it look like you're doing another payroll, right? So if you're paying your other expenses maybe twice a month, then roll that invoice in with everything else and pay them then. And make sure that you're not the only employer. or one of two in a year, unless it's a huge contract. Hi, Shayna. Nice to see you. If you are the only employer and that person is doing like one or two projects a year, then it has to be a mammoth project where they need to do this, and then when the project is finished, they're gone. So let's say they're overhauling your entire billing system, or they're putting in a CRM that's you're a huge company and it's going to take a long time to do that. Then yeah, you may be the only employer for that period of time, and the contract is very clear that this is going to take 8 months to do, or whatever it is, and that's fine. But if this is a normal is normal for you to hire an independent contractor, and maybe what you're doing is only going to take a month, and you're the only employer they have for that year, yeah, probably not a real independent contractor. This person is probably a part-time employee. So just be very careful. And other good practices. Okay. Have your attorney review your independent contractor contract. This is really important, because if you're writing the contract yourself, you may not have all 6 points that a contract requires. So you never want to end up in court and have somebody say, who wrote this contract? It's not even legal, right? You want to make sure that the independent contractor contract is reviewed by your attorney, especially if the contractor wrote it, which is not unusual, right? They often have their own templates and whatnot. You want to make sure that your attorney looks at that contract so that there's no gotchas in there where they say, hey, you may want to look at this because this looks like this is not a real independent contractor, or maybe there's something in there that's going to come back and bite you. And also, you want to have any questions answered by your attorney, not the internet, please. The internet has all kinds of information. Much of it is old, much of it's outdated, much of it is incorrect. And you want to make sure that you're getting the answers that are right for your business in your state. That's really important. Now, I know that as a solopreneur or a small business owner, you're probably saying, oh my goodness, you want me to put an attorney on retainer? I don't have the thousands of dollars that it's going to take to do that. And I understand, been there, done there, got the t-shirt. I built my business bootstrapping. I didn't have anybody putting money in other than my husband and myself. So I understand what it means to have a small business budget, right? But you don't have to have a huge budget in order to get big quality advice from attorneys. You can have big business attorneys on a small business budget, I promise you, right? We know that for a good business attorney, the average hourly rate is going to be over $300 an hour. In some states, it's going to be more like $400 an hour or more. I've had people tell me that their attorneys are charging $750 an hour for good advice. And we want you to have good advice, people who've been in the business long enough to have seen everything, and to make sure that you're getting the best advice possible. But you don't have to pay that amount of money to get that quality of advice, right? You can get a wealth of business services, not just answering a couple of questions or looking at a contract, but you can get a whole wealth of services for your business on a membership that is less than $200 a month. So think about that. You can call your attorney for an unlimited number of business issues, less than $200 a month. So if that attorney would normally charge $500 an hour, you're getting that advice for less than $200 a month, right? You can get them to do collection letters for clients who haven't paid you. You can get them to do all kinds of things that you need for your business. You don't have to go to the internet. You just tap an app on your phone, type in your question, hit the button for a callback, and an attorney from that law firm calls you back, all for less than $200 a month. So if you have issues for your business, in addition to knowing when you can hire somebody as an independent contractor and have them review that contract for you, then let's talk. Let's get you the legal services that you need. You've got a professional team, and you probably have a bookkeeper and a CPA. Maybe you've got an insurance person. You may have somebody providing benefits for, the one or two employees that you have, but you don't have an attorney because you've always thought that it was too expensive. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not. For less than $200 a month, we can get you the advice that you need. On average, these attorneys have over 21, 22 years of experience. So they know what they're talking about. They're excellent, and we can provide them for you. So let's talk. I've taken up my half hour as I promised. I want to be respectful of your time. So just copy down my number, 702-462-4616. Text me and say, hey, I saw you on the LinkedIn Live. Would love to chat, or contact me on LinkedIn, and we'll set up a time to go over what it is that these people can provide. And you, as a savvy business owner, can decide what's right for your business. So everyone take care. Nice to see you. Love having you all here and doing this training. And take care, everybody. Bye-bye.